And the idea being that with a film, you can be in hundreds, thousands of places at the same time. You don't need to be present talking. The film largely speaks for itself because it is the story of individuals and people relate with seeing a sort of narrative thread where someone goes through change and grows and learns things in their lives. And that's true of every single one of our films, in Counterpoint, Budrus, and My Neighborhood. All of them are character driven, which means that there is a person or a few people at the heart of the story that you follow over time, and that you really see struggling with how they can personally make a contribution to ending the conflict. And I think that's why the film resonates across the board, and that's why even if you have political opinions that are very much different than what you would see as the political viewpoint of the film, it still can have an impact on you. And I've seen this over and over again. Even people who, will walk out of the film still saying, I still believe everything that I believed before. They will tell you that that story was a story that they had never heard before, and that it's something that is going to stay with them whenever they think about the situation right now. So it humanizes it at a level that even if the political opinion is not immediately changed, because political opinions change over time and it's a longer process than just simply watching a film, you start cracking this fixed narrative that they have about something. And slowly, and our work is continuous, right? We don't make a film and then we drop it. The film is the initial tool to take people towards a much longer journey of change. And we have, over the last 10 years now that we're working on this issue, seen dramatically, both in anecdotal individual levels and also through quantitative research that we've done, and I'll share some of that just in terms of our impact of what we have seen the film change the narrative, particularly in English language media. And so, the way that we approached it, our filmmaking, was we decided that in the very beginning.
Interrupt for a second to say something about. Could you say something about we?
Yeah, so Just Vision, we are a nonprofit organization, and we have now 12 staff members, some of us part-time, and the group is made up of journalists, filmmakers, human rights advocates, and facilitators. Israelis, Palestinians, Americans, I'm Brazilian, and we are based in New York, DC, and Jerusalem. So our office in Jerusalem is actually in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, which is where My Neighborhood takes place. So we actually followed the transformation of this neighborhood in a very personal way over the last 80 years of working from there. And when we started, we really felt like it was important to start in some ways from the start, which was the pain and the suffering. And that's what In Counterpoint really focuses on. In Counterpoint focuses on Palestinians and Israelis who lost family members, either their children or their brothers or sisters, and who have come together now across lines to try to create communications with across and within their societies, to show that there is someone to talk to on the other side, right? Because one of the sort of myths of the conflict is that there's no one to talk to on the other side. And you hear that sort of from both sides. And so Counterpoint really breaks that down, and it's a personal story of an Israeli mom and Palestinian brother, and the journey that they go through. And I'm not gonna tell you anything else because I really wanted to see it, and it's a lot of things happen in their lives over the course of the filming, and it's very personal, and it's very sort of about looking at how people can transform pain into something constructive and how that transformation takes place. The next step, though, for us, which was equally important in the beginning, is to look at, okay, so you have a partner on the other side, but what do you actually do with that partner, right? Because simply meeting and talking and realizing that, oh, he can be my friend, won't do much to change the structural problems that you're living under, particularly when there's such an asymmetric relationship on the ground. Yeah.
Could I just say one thing that for me was important in counterpoint, doesn't give away any of the story really, is that the people were not just talking to the people on the other side. Their main activism was to talk to people within their own community. So the Israelis were talking to Israelis about their experiences and what they knew, how they had experienced talking to the other side, and why, despite having lost a son or a brother, they are in themselves been imprisoned or whatever. And they were very different kinds of people. A military man, and they were very different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
But so they were talking to high school students and synagogues or people who were in hospital from war wounds. I mean, they were talking to people on their own side about what they were experiencing. So I think that was a really powerful part of it. So it wasn't only just, oh, I can talk to the other side, as they were there to witness why it was important to talk to the other side and to listen.
Absolutely, yeah. And so for us, the next step was sort of, once you discover that there are partners, how do you work with those partners to create real change on the ground? And Budrus for us became the sort of response to that. It's a story that I think really gets at the heart of one of the most common questions that I hear in the West, which is around where is the Palestinian Gandhi? Why don't Palestinians use nonviolence? If Palestinians use nonviolence, there will be peace. It's sort of very simplistic narrative that actually erases a lot of the agency that is happening in Palestinian society today and a lot of the activism that takes place. And so we came into the research process for that film very much looking for a story that would both break down that narrative and also break down the narrative in Palestinian society that you often hear, which is that nonviolence won't work. And that we've tried nonviolence and nonviolence won't work. And so it had to be a sort of successful local example of nonviolent resistance that carried within it a lot of the lessons that we believe and that the local leadership believes are key for a successful movement to emerge on the ground. And some of those include women's leadership. So in Budrus, the daughter of the head of the village, who was 15 at the time, organizes a women's contingent, and she's actually herself the first one to jump in front of the bulldozer that is about to uproot all the olive trees that find themselves on the route of the separation barrier. So Budrus is a village that, like many other villages in the West Bank, was going to be destroyed. 40% of their land was going to be confiscated. They were going to be surrounded by the wall, so ultimately that community would have to go away to live somewhere else because they wouldn't have freedom of access to the rest of the West Bank. And the community self-organized, and they did so with a lot of the sort of key elements of organizing. So political unity, so across the board, Hamas, Fatah, the FLP, PFLP, the entire Palestinian alphabet soup of parties united, which is very rare. And the women were in the leadership, and Israeli activists, hundreds of them, for the first time crossed the green line in support of this nonviolent resistance movement. So they were struggling side by side. And just to answer your question, we don't actually bring anybody together. We are documentary filmmakers. So we document what is already happening. So what happened in Budrus, we had zero influence in bringing it together or in the outcome. Within Counterpoint, we had nothing to do with the creation of the Parent Circle, which is this group. They have been in existence for years before we started documenting them. So really we are observing and bringing those stories, because many people think that those things are not happening, when in fact they're happening every day on the ground, and we really want to make them more visible. And so with the story of Budrus...
Can I just say one thing, which is for years, because I've been involved in lots of nonviolence research myself and activism, there have been organizations going to work on, like Women in Black and Witness for Peace and all these different groups that go, Fellowship of Resistance, that go over there to work with Palestinians to try and do actions, and they have come back bereft because they so wanted to get the Israelis to come over and participate, and because the Israelis wanted to do it but couldn't quite bring themselves to do it. So when she says it's the first time that the Israelis came, it is huge because there is a fabulous peace movement in Israel. Unbelievably, not just in its activism, but its whole thinking, its whole analysis of Israeli society and how it stays in place. They're really smart, they're really active, and they're really dedicated, and they just couldn't cross over. So it was huge that they came because they would have these fabulous actions, and all these people from the West would come, you know, and they wouldn't come.
Yeah.
And so it was a major thing.
What was the thing that led to the breakthrough, do you think?
So I think there was a couple of things. I think there was a leadership on the ground that was very smart in how it articulated the role of Israeli activists.
Right.
Because I think what happens is that not only Israelis are afraid of going because, you know, for Israelis it's illegal, first of all.
Yeah.
The Israeli government makes it illegal for citizens to cross into Area A's of the West Bank. Second, you know, Israelis don't know Palestinians, right? The Palestinians that they have met, even the left-wing ones, are mostly the workers in their house. That's like, if not the sort of image of the terrorist on the television. And so there's a pretty big barrier to that. Also on the Palestinian side, there is a lot of skepticism around who are these Israelis who are coming here. And so I think there was both a need for the Israeli activist community to understand its own role and come in a sense as supporters of a Palestinian-led nonviolence movement, as opposed to, which I think has been a trend, and you see that everywhere in the civil rights movement in the US also. You know, there's often like the more powerful side kind of loses sight of the power dynamics and wants to take over movements. And I think in Budrus that really didn't take place, and there was a lot of understanding from the Israeli activists of their role and a lot of clear leadership from the Palestinian side around, you know, how do we partner together.
Were there any negative consequences for the Israeli activists?
I mean, they were arrested and they were beaten up, and you know, and
they risked their lives.
Yeah, I mean, they could
get
shot.
I mean, they were
by their inside.
Yeah, I mean, no Israelis. You know, I don't know of any Israeli activists since then. Also, not then and not since then, and the movement has grown a lot of Israeli activists involved in this that have been killed or even like critically injured. I mean, there's been a lot of serious injuries. One person lost one of their eyesights, one activist. But Israelis, and this is a big part of why they're there, are lower the level of violence. So if there's an Israeli Jewish person in the protest, the army is a lot less likely to use live ammunition. In fact, probably will not use live ammunition if there is an Israeli person there. The moment the Israeli person leaves the site, and this is and you see that in Budrus, like there's a moment where the head of the border police, the Israeli border police, says on a megaphone to the person that he's communicating, his superiors, like, well, there are too many Israelis here, and then they go and arrest the Israelis, and the goal is to get rid of the Israelis, send them home, so that they can deal more harshly with the protests. And that you see all the time, and it's a constant dynamic, and that's a big part why they go, and they know that. They're human shields, basically. They're there to lower the level of violence and allow the protest to continue.
Since this is a small group, can I just interrupt to say, how are you feeling?
I just think it's quite, I don't know what the word would be, quite horrific that that's the way that, I mean, in my mindset, I think it's all
obviously
ridiculous anyway.
But
I think it's a very brave and clever thing actually for the Israeli activists to do. And yeah, I mean, it's something you never hear of, which just goes to show how...
The power of attention.
Yeah.
How are you doing with it? How as you think about yourself and possibly showing some of this to your family, how is it for you?
I think
Or just for yourself. I mean, I'm not even asking about your family, but just for yourself, how is it to hear about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly interesting. I definitely think that I try to keep fairly ignorant on most of these issues. Well, because people often, if they find out you're Jewish, the identification issues of crossovers between what I'm, so I try and keep fairly ignorant. But so this is really
You
old.
mean in this country, people?
Yeah, I often target, right?
Really?
There's a big pro-Palestinian movement, and when people find out you're Jewish,
They assume you're an enemy. They assume you're an enemy of justice.
But it's all new for me, so it's really interesting.
Wow. Let's talk more about that later.
No, it's really, I mean, because I have lots of Jewish friends, tons, like a majority probably, and also activists, peace
I did
activists,
too, but
everything,
I
but they,
didn't know that I've never heard that comment before, so I'm really
really?
interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but no, they get targeted.
Where
a
I
lot.
live is just hugely Jewish. Just interestingly, just randomly, in North London. But they're all extremely liberal. I mean, they would be
So-
kind of, the first ones to express as much horror as us.
But if they meet other people, they
Exactly.
may
But
not.
then equally, they all have Israeli family members or
Right.
family and all
Yeah.
that. And so,
So
there is a
how-
role that the diaspora can play.
How is it for
Yeah.
you to be having this veil of ignorance lifted? Does it make you feel more vulnerable?
I still can't talk about it to my friends. It's still, or my Israeli or Jewish friends.
It's
It's
such
not.
a huge issue.
At least I'll have something interesting to say with my non-Jewish friends at the pub later.
But you're right.
Sorry.
It's such a different.
No, everybody is.
It's really similar. For me, I'm from India, and it's the same thing with talking about Hindus and Muslims almost. I mean, it's not quite as bad because obviously.
Most people don't know much.
No, but I mean, in India, they are obviously coexisting side by side, even though there are occasionally huge violent riots and things. But it's this view of people as other, and even though you have, you all work together, or you might have friends and all the rest of it, when it comes down to it, people just kind of close down and shut down, and people kind of retreat to their own perspectives, and it's very hard for someone looking in from the outside, even slightly from the outside, like me, to see what you can do to change that. So I think what you're doing is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great to hear the positive on both sides as well. Like, really nice to hear that there are people on both sides working together.
There always are.
Yeah.
It's just,
I
again,
I feel like we don't hear that.
Yeah.
I know,
I
you
hope
hear
that
about
when
all the horror.
I hope when you get to see the film, you actually get to see it with each other or with some other people, because it's really powerful, I think. It's
Yeah.
such,
Is
the
there
film,
space for Charlotte to come tonight? If
Yeah.
Charlotte could come
Yeah,
tonight?
of course.
please
Would you
come.
like to come tonight? I'm going tonight.
Where? What? Yes.
Charlotte's been away, so we haven't had a proper catch up.
Sorry.
There's a screening of My Neighborhood at the European Council on Foreign Relations
Oh, cool.
tonight at 5:30.
Oh,
So
great.
it'd be wonderful to have you there. And the moderator, who is definitely going to be more than a moderator because he has very strong opinions, is Daniel Levy, who used to be the Israeli peace negotiator.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And he's a great speaker and very knowledgeable one. So it's a treat to
That's
have him
really
hosting
great.
it tonight.
That's gonna be
So it's
great.
from 5:30 to 6:30
Yes.
tonight.
Count me in.
Okay.
Yay!
I'll learn so much. I'll be,
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be fully informed by tomorrow morning.
And then you can take in Counterpoint home and watch it.
You get to become an expert.
Yeah, that's where my family can't get enough of it now. But yeah, it's interesting how as well, you said you don't bring them together, but you're surely the power
But it
of
can
film.
be a neutral way of bringing the issue up. It's not someone preaching at someone
Yeah.
else. I think it's a brilliant.
Yeah.
Bring people together in the watching of the film.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
film
yeah,
is a
yeah,
tool for bringing
yeah.
people together,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when the filmmaking is taking place, it's filming what other people have done
Yeah.
to bring people together.
The goal of the film, there's two main goals that we have in terms of the impact campaign that we launched for the film. The first one is this issue of creating the political space where those stories can have the impact that they have the potential for, right? Because a story like Budrus, as it spreads across the West Bank, as it has, so Budrus was one example that inspired lots of villages immediately after it took
Well,
place.
you have to tell what happens in the film so that people
So
get a
Budrus,
sense of
so
this.
yeah, it's a shame that
I
I didn't
did
give
when
away.
when I watched, well, maybe you don't. Let's not say it. But when I watched it, I didn't know the outcome.
Right. It's
And
good
it-
to not know the outcome.
It's good not to know that.
But Budrus was an inspiring enough story where it really spread to other communities in the West Bank. So there's many villages that are taking this similar approach of nonviolent resistance, like
Oh,
Bilain,
wonderful.
Nialine,
Yeah.
now the sort of main one, Nabi Saleh, that actually the New York Times did a cover piece on the New York Times magazine 2 weekends ago. A beautiful, beautiful
Really?
cover of Nabi Saleh, of the village, of the villagers.
That's wonderful.
And we took the journalists there and helped
Wow.
make. So we work a lot with journalists after they see
We
the
should do
films.
that.
Yeah.
They want to know. It's a beautiful piece, very, very well
This is
done.
why I wish they could go to FSG.
Well,
So strategic
We have
funding.
to talk, yeah,
Yeah.
we should talk more about your evidence, because the thing is that
Should I
a
turn
lot
this
of
off?
the funders, yeah,
Yeah.